Princess Sarala of the Iluan Empire stood on the balcony of the Great Hall, looking down at the human soldier who had just arrived. She was only 19, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had been told her whole life that she was above everyone else. Her bright silver eyes watched the human with the same curiosity she would give to a strange animal. She had heard stories about humans, emotional, slow, soft, and foolish. And now one of them stood before her, assigned as her personal guard for the peace treaty mission. Daniel Ward, 25 years old, wore old human armor that looked like it had survived too many battles. It was scratched, dull, and slightly bent at the shoulder. His boots were dusty, and the tiredness in his eyes did not match someone so young. He stood straight, silent, and respectful, something Sarala did not expect from a species known for chaos. As he stepped forward and bowed, the Iluan officers around the room exchanged amused looks. They had seen elite warriors from across the galaxy, tall, armored, and fierce. This human looked nothing like that. He looked ordinary. Sarala leaned slightly forward, letting her long white hair fall over her shoulder. "So this is the human soldier chosen to guard me?" she said loudly, making sure all officers heard. This worn-out creature?" Her voice carried the sharpness of someone used to being obeyed without question. The officers laughed politely. Humans were new to the interstellar stage, and Iluans did not see them as equals. They saw them as amusing, harmless beings who tried too hard. Daniel remained silent. He didn't react to the laughter nor to the princess's tone. He simply straightened his back and looked forward, eyes steady but calm. The princess noticed this, and something about his silence annoyed her. She preferred when people reacted: anger, fear, embarrassment. But Daniel gave her none of that. She stepped down from the balcony, walking toward him. Her steps were elegant, almost floating, the way Iluan royalty moved. When she reached him, she circled him slowly, studying him from every angle. "Tell me, human," she asked in a mocking voice, "did your leaders send you because they think my life is unimportant? Or because they believe anyone can guard me? Even someone like you?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but he still didn't speak. He knew the rules of diplomacy. Humans were still trying to earn respect in the galaxy. He could not risk angering the princess, no matter how sharp her words were. Sarala tapped his armor with a finger. "Look at this. Scratches everywhere. Dents on the chest plate. Is this armor or trash metal?" More laughter followed from the officers. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, as if steadying himself. He remembered training sessions, missions, and worlds where his armor had taken hits meant for others. Every scratch was a memory, some painful, some heavy. To him, the armor was not ugly. It was his history. But to the princess, it was a toy to mock. She looked directly into his eyes, expecting fear or irritation. Instead, she saw calmness, deep, tired calmness. That irritated her even more. "Humans are strange," she said coldly. "You don't speak unless ordered. You don't defend yourself. Do you have any pride?" Again, no response. Or are humans simply too afraid to speak to royalty? Daniel finally lifted his gaze. There was no anger in his eyes, only quiet strength. But he still said nothing. The silence was heavier than any reply. The princess stepped back slightly, feeling a strange, uncomfortable flicker in her chest. She didn't know why. Maybe she expected him to break. Maybe she wanted him to argue. It would have been easier, but he didn't, and that made her uneasy. Before she could say another word, Daniel bowed again, slow, respectful, steady. His armor glinted weakly under the pale palace lights. Princess Sarala did not understand humans. But this moment, this silent man, would stay in her mind far longer than she wished. It was the beginning of something she could not yet name. Princess Sarala walked ahead of her guards, her long white robe trailing behind her like a streak of light. Wherever she went, conversations stopped and eyes followed. She was born to be admired, feared, and obeyed, never questioned. Especially not by a human. Daniel Ward followed several steps behind her, keeping the respectful distance required of a personal guard. His armor clinked softly with each step, echoing in the marble hallway of the Aluan Palace. He moved quietly, blending into the background like a shadow. That was what he had always been good at, protecting without being noticed. But Sarala noticed him, every step he took, every silent breath he released, every moment he chose not to respond to her earlier insults. It bothered her. His silence angered her in a way she did not understand. As they reached the chamber for the afternoon council meeting, Sarala suddenly stopped and turned to face him. Daniel stopped immediately, lowering his gaze, waiting for her command. "Human," she said sharply. "Look at me." He obeyed, lifting his eyes calmly. That calmness irritated her again. She wanted him to show something: fear, pride, anger, anything that proved he was not made of stone. Instead, she only found quiet strength in his expression. "Do you know," she began, folding her arms, "that my people believe humans are emotional creatures? Quick to anger, quick to panic, quick to run." Her voice carried the tone of someone reciting a fact she believed without question. Daniel remained silent. He did not agree. He did not disagree. He simply listened. "And yet," she continued, stepping closer, "you stand here as if nothing touches you. As if my words have no effect at all." Her eyes narrowed. "Is that because you are trained to be silent, or because you simply have no feelings?" The Aluan officers behind her laughed softly. It was clear they enjoyed watching the human being questioned and mocked. Daniel took a slow breath. He was used to disrespect from alien leaders. Humans were still the newcomers, the ones who had to prove themselves. But from a young princess who had no idea what battles humans had survived, it stung more than he expected. But still, he said nothing. His silence made Sarala feel something unfamiliar, a tiny sting in her chest. Was it frustration? Annoyance? Something else? She could not name it. All she knew was that she wanted to break the mask on his face. She wanted a reaction. "Tell me, soldier," she said, her voice turning colder. "Do humans only know how to follow orders? Do you have thoughts of your own? Or do you just wait to be commanded?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but only for a second. Then he bowed slightly. "My duty is to protect you, Your Highness." His voice was steady, controlled. A simple answer, but something about it felt heavy. Too heavy. Sarala blinked. She expected his voice to tremble, but it didn't. It was calm, so calm it almost sounded sad. "Protect me?" she repeated. "How can someone like you protect anyone?" She pointed at the scratches on his armor. "Your armor looks like it has survived a war between children. Your boots are falling apart. Even your eyes look tired." Daniel did not defend himself. He did not say that he had protected entire families during planetary evacuations. He did not say that he had stood between fire and civilians more times than he could count. He did not say that his armor carried the history of people he saved. He simply stood still. His silence made the room feel colder. Sarala stepped back, confused by her own emotions. Why did she feel wrong? Why did speaking those words feel like throwing stones at someone who already carried too much weight? She turned away quickly, hiding the sudden tightness in her throat. She walked into the council chamber without another word. Daniel followed quietly. But something in the air had changed. For the first time since she mocked him, the princess felt a small pinch of regret. She did not understand it yet, but she would, because sometimes the deepest wounds are made not by weapons, but by words spoken carelessly. And Daniel carried those wounds silently. Like he carried everything else. The great hall was empty now. The officers had gone to their meetings, leaving only the princess and her human guard behind. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Daniel stood in the corner, silent as always, While Princess Sarala paced back and forth, her thoughts tangled. She could not stop thinking about him. The way he had stood there, listening to her words without a flicker of anger or fear. The way his eyes had looked at her, not with hostility, not with submission, but with calm, steady endurance. It made her chest tighten in a way she did not understand. She had mocked him freely, and yet he had offered her nothing but silence. "What is wrong with me?" she whispered to herself. She pressed her hand to her forehead. "Why does it feel like I hurt him?" Daniel, hearing her soft words, remained quiet. He did not look at her. He did not comfort her. He simply waited, as he always did, respecting her space, her dignity, and hers alone. Sarala stopped pacing. She faced him fully this time, curiosity mixed with frustration. "Do humans always remain silent when they are insulted?" she asked, her voice softer than before. "Do you feel nothing at all?" Daniel's eyes lifted slightly, but he said nothing. His silence was not emptiness. It was not ignorance. It was something heavier, something unspoken. It carried weight, a history of battles, sacrifices, nights spent alone, and lives saved at the cost of his own safety. She stepped closer. You stand like this as if my words cannot reach you," she said, almost accusingly. "It is infuriating." The corners of her mouth trembled. She did not realize it, but she was trembling slightly. Anger and guilt twisted together inside her. She wanted him to react, to yell, to argue, to show pride, but he remained still. The silence between them grew, stretching across the room like a living thing. Daniel finally took a small step forward, careful not to intrude. "Your Highness," he said softly, "I have faced battles where soldiers screamed, where people blamed me for things I could not control. I have learned that words can wound, but silence can teach. I choose to remain silent because I will not give my anger or frustration power over me." Princess Sarala froze. His words were not loud, yet they struck her more strongly than any insult she could imagine. She had been mocking him, judging him without understanding, and he had responded not with anger, but with dignity. She could feel tears prickling in her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. Her pride was not accustomed to being touched by such quiet courage. You are strange," she whispered, her voice almost trembling. "You do not fight back. You do not beg. You do not even show annoyance. And yet, I feel ashamed." Daniel lowered his gaze, not to avoid her, but because he understood. Pride was natural, and apology could come only when someone saw the truth of their own behavior. He would wait. He would always wait. The princess swallowed hard. She had spent 19 years learning to control the world around her, to make people laugh or fear her, to command respect. And now, for the first time, someone stood before her who could not be swayed by mockery or status. Someone who had more power in his silence than she could command withal. Her words, her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in front of her. I don't know what to say," she admitted softly. You make me feel small, even though I am the princess, and I am angry with myself for that." Daniel's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. Not one of victory, but one of understanding. He did not need words. His presence, his endurance, his quiet strength spoke volumes. The princess looked away, blinking back emotions she had never felt before. She realized something important. Respect could not be demanded. It had to be earned. And this human soldier had earned it in ways she could barely comprehend. For a long moment, the room was still. The sunlight caught the edge of Daniel's armor, now almost forgotten, as he simply stood there, letting her discover the lesson in her own heart. And in that silence, Princess Sarala learned something she would never forget. Sometimes courage is quiet. Sometimes strength speaks without sound. And sometimes The smallest act of patience can change a life, if only you are willing to see it. The next morning, the palace corridors were quiet, almost empty. As the early sunlight poured through the tall windows, Princess Sarala walked slowly, her mind tangled with thoughts she did not fully understand. She could not stop thinking about Daniel, the human soldier who had remained silent while she mocked him. His silence haunted her more than any voice could. Daniel followed, as he always did, moving like a shadow behind her. His armor, though old and battered, clinked softly with each step. It had been his protection for years, but now it felt heavier than ever. He could feel the weight pressing down, not just from the metal, but from the burden of being underestimated, mocked, and misunderstood by a princess who was supposed to be wise beyond her years. Sarala stopped in the center of the marble hall. Her silver eyes traced the scratches on his armor, the dents on the chest plate, the worn leather straps of his boots. And for the first time, she did not feel amusement. She felt shame. "I can't believe I said those things," she whispered, almost to herself. "Why did I mock him? I didn't even know him." Daniel did not respond. He never argued. He simply stood straight, shoulders squared, hands relaxed at his sides. But today, the silence felt heavier. Today, the quiet was no longer patience. It was a presence demanding recognition. The princess's thoughts spiraled. She had always believed that humans were weak, easily offended, and simple. And yet, here was one human who did not react in anger, who did not run, who did not beg for apology. Instead, he carried himself with dignity, even under her sharpest words. Her chest tightened. How can someone be so strong without fighting?" she murmured. Daniel's voice was soft when he finally spoke, but even soft words carried weight. "Your Highness, strength is not always shown with swords or armor. Sometimes it is shown by standing quietly, by choosing not to respond to every insult, by carrying burdens without complaint." Sarala's lips parted, but no words came. She had never heard anyone explain courage like that. She had never realized that armor could be more than metal, that silence could be louder than a battle cry. For a moment, she watched him, really watched him, and the realization struck her suddenly and sharply. She had judged him by what she saw, by the surface, not by the heart beneath. She had assumed weakness where there was quiet strength. She had mocked the very courage she should have honored. Daniel shifted slightly, glancing at her, though his eyes remained calm. He did not need to speak. His calmness, his patience, his quiet endurance, it was enough. The princess's hands clenched at her sides. I don't deserve your presence," she whispered. I have been cruel." Daniel's face remained composed, but inside, he felt the familiar weight of responsibility. Armor had protected him from countless attacks, but it had never shielded him from this feeling small in someone else's eyes, even when that someone was a princess. Today, he felt the armor's weight as a cage, not as protection. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up to the straps of his chest plate. Sarala's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" she asked, a note of alarm creeping into her voice. Daniel said nothing. His movements were calm, steady. One by one, he unclipped the armor, lifting the heavy pieces off his shoulders, placing them carefully on the marble floor. Each dent and scratch seemed to glint in the sunlight. A silent story of battle survived, people protected, and hardships endured. The room was completely silent except for the faint clink of armor hitting the floor. Princess Sarala could hardly breathe. She had expected resistance, defense, anger, but not this. Finally, he stood bare-chested, not proud, not ashamed, simply present. And then, without another word, he bowed once slowly, deeply, and turned away. He left the hall in silence. Sarala remained frozen, staring at the empty space where he had stood. A strange, heavy feeling filled her chest. Pride, fear, guilt, Awe she could not separate them. She had mocked a human. She had tried to belittle him. And yet he had left her with nothing but his quiet dignity. For the first time, she understood something she had never been taught. Courage is not always loud. Strength is not always visible. And true respect is earned, not given. The echoes of his footsteps faded, leaving only the soft sunlight and the princess's thoughts. And in that emptiness, Sarala realized that she had seen the heart of a human warrior, and it was far stronger than she had ever imagined. The palace gardens were quiet that afternoon. The fountains whispered, and sunlight danced across the flowers, but Princess Sarala felt none of their beauty. She walked slowly along the marble paths, her hands clasped behind her back, thinking of the human soldier Daniel Ward, who had walked out of the great hall without a word. She remembered the way he had removed his armor. Each dent, each scratch, each worn strap told a story she could not yet read. And for the first time, she wished she could see him not as a soldier, not as a human under her command, but simply as a person. Daniel sat on the edge of the fountain, his armor stacked neatly beside him. He watched the water ripple, his gaze calm and distant, as though the world did not press on him at all. But the truth was, it did. Every mission he had survived, every life he had saved, every battle he had faced, it weighed on him quietly, under the weight of human endurance. His armor had always protected him, yes, but it had also hidden him, hiding the man who lived, who cared, who felt. Sarala stopped a few steps away, uncertain. She had never approached a soldier like this before. She had always commanded, always ordered, always assumed that her word alone shaped the world. And yet, she found herself hesitating. She wanted to speak, but the words seemed small compared to what she had witnessed. Finally, she sat beside him, careful to leave space. He did not look at her, did not flinch or shift. He simply allowed her presence, as if it were a small acknowledgement that she might be learning something important. Why did you leave without saying anything?" she asked softly, her voice almost swallowed by the gentle sound of the fountain. Daniel glanced at her briefly, then back at the water. "Because, Princess, some things cannot be explained by words. Some strength must be shown, not told. I removed the armor not to hurt you, but to remind you my worth is not in the metal I wear, but in what I do and how I act." Sarala's throat tightened. She had thought she understood humans, had thought she knew them, had thought she could predict every reaction. But Daniel was different. His courage was quiet. His power was calm. His dignity did not demand acknowledgement, it simply existed. Waiting for others to notice, she reached out slowly, as if testing the waters, and brushed a hand against the empty shoulder where the armor had been. It felt vulnerable, fragile, human, and yet, in that fragility, she saw unshakable strength. "You've saved people," she whispered. "More than I could ever imagine. More than anyone in my court has even thought to do. And yet, you let me mock you. You let me judge you." Daniel's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "I have done what I had to do. But no one else should have to carry the weight of your words if they do not choose to. I chose silence because it is stronger than any argument I could have made." Princess Sarala looked down at her hands. She felt a strange mix of guilt, admiration, and something unfamiliar respect. She had been proud of her wit, her sharp tongue, her ability to command. But next to Daniel, all of that felt small, trivial, even foolish. You are not like anyone I have ever met," she said softly. "Not just a soldier, a human. A person who carries more than anyone can see. You've shown me something I cannot forget." Daniel's gaze finally met hers, steady and honest. In that moment, she saw no fear, no pride, no challenge, only clarity. He was a human who had survived, who had endured, who had chosen courage and dignity over anger. And in doing so, He had taught her a lesson she could never have learned in books or lectures. For the first time in her life, Princess Sarala realized that respect could not be demanded, mocked, or forced. It could only be earned, and Daniel Ward had earned it without raising his voice, without drawing a sword, without pleading. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It was full of understanding, full of unspoken stories, full of the kind of connection that comes only when someone shows their true self without fear. And in that quiet garden, Princess Sarala understood something she would never forget. Sometimes, the strongest hearts are the ones that choose calm, the ones that wait, the ones that speak not with words but with presence. Palace Hall was quiet again that evening, empty except for Princess Sarala and Daniel Ward. The torches flickered along the walls, casting shadows that danced like silent witnesses to the story unfolding. Sarala could not focus on the glow or the grand tapestries. All she could see was in Daniel, standing in the center of the room, silent, steady, unshaken by the weight of her words or her earlier laughter. She approached slowly, unsure if she was walking toward a soldier, a stranger, or someone who had just changed her entire understanding of courage. Daniel looked at her then, calmly, without any pride or fear, and the silver light of the torches reflected off the edges of his worn armor. Each dent, each scratch, told the story of battles she could not even imagine. Yet tonight, that armor felt different. Heavy, not just with metal, but with all the misunderstanding, judgment, and mockery he had silently endured. Princess Sarala swallowed hard. "Daniel," she began, her voice small. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought humans were different. I thought you would react like others, but you are stronger than anything I could have imagined." Daniel did not speak. He simply stood tall, letting her words settle around him. And then, with deliberate calm, he reached up to the straps of his chest plate. Sarala froze. "What are you doing?" she asked, though a part of her already knew. Without a word, Daniel unclipped the straps. One by one, the heavy pieces of armor came off. His shoulders, chest, and arms were exposed. Muscles toned from years of training, scars from battles he had survived, and the quiet dignity of someone who had lived through hardship without complaint. All of it stood there in the open. He laid each piece down gently, carefully, as if he were placing memories on the floor. Sarala's eyes widened. She had expected anger, protest, even embarrassment, but not this. Not the quiet, careful, deliberate removal of his armor. And when it was done, when Daniel stood before her unprotected, bare-chested, he bowed. Not a proud bow, not a submissive bow, but a respectful, gentle bow that spoke louder than any argument, any speech, any act of defiance. He turned his back and walked toward the exit, silent, calm, entirely himself. Sarala remained frozen. The weight of what had happened pressed on her chest. She had mocked him. She had underestimated him. And he had responded not with anger, not with words, not with pride, but with the simplest, most powerful thing she could imagine: dignity. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, as if she could pull him back, as if words might still be enough. But they weren't. All she could do was watch him go. And yet, something shifted inside her. Guilt and admiration tangled together, forming a new understanding. Strength was not about who shouted the loudest or who struck the hardest. Strength was quiet. Strength endured without complaint. Strength chose dignity over insult. Princess Sarala sank onto a nearby bench, her silver hair brushing the marble. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, not of sadness, not of anger, but of awe. For the first time, she truly saw a human being. Not a soldier, not a servant, not someone beneath her, but a person. A man who carried more than anyone could see, who protected more than anyone could imagine, and who taught her more in silence than she had ever learned from words. She realized something important. She could not demand respect. She could not mock it into submission. True respect came only when it was earned, and Daniel Ward had earned it without lifting a weapon, without arguing, without a single word of protest. The princess let her hands rest on her lap, breathing slowly. Outside, the last light of the sun faded, but inside, a new understanding glowed. And in the quiet of the palace hall, she knew this was only the beginning. Daniel's steps faded, but his presence, his lesson, and the story told by his silent dignity would remain with Princess Sarayla forever. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to see someone for who they truly were. And in that understanding, something remarkable began. The princess who had mocked a human soldier now felt a deep, unwavering respect for the strength of humanity itself. The next morning, the palace was alive with activity. Guards marched in formation, servants carried trays of fruit and tea, and the hum of preparation for the princess's council meeting filled the air. But Princess Sarayla did not notice any of it. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying the events of the past days. She could still see Daniel standing silent, removing his armor, bowing, and walking away without a single word. She realized she had been wrong. Not just wrong about him, but wrong about humans in general. She had mocked him because she did not understand. She had judged him because of appearances. And yet, in his silence, he had shown her something she could never have imagined: courage without arrogance, strength without pride, and dignity without demand. Sarayla found him in the training courtyard, sitting alone under a tree. The sunlight touched his hair and shoulders, and for a moment, she hesitated. This human, who had walked away from her mockery, who had shown her the power of quiet endurance, seemed untouchable, even without armor. "Daniel," she said softly, and he looked up. His calm gaze met hers, steady and patient, as though he had been waiting for this moment. She approached slowly, not as a princess commanding a subject, but as someone seeking understanding. She knelt beside him, careful not to startle him. I have been cruel," she admitted. "I mocked you because I did not understand. I judged you because I assumed weakness. And yet she hesitated, searching for the right words. "You have taught me something I cannot forget." Daniel listened quietly, his eyes calm, unshaken by the weight of her words. "I see now," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "that strength is not always loud. Courage is not always visible. And respect is earned, not demanded." Daniel gave her the faintest nod. No words were needed. His presence alone confirmed her understanding. Sarayla took a deep breath, feeling a new humility fill her chest. She looked at the worn, empty armor stacked nearby. "You didn't need to argue. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to prove yourself. And yet, here you are, stronger than anyone I have ever met." For the first time she bowed. Not a casual, polite bow. Not a bow demanded by duty or ceremony, but a deep, sincere bow, filled with respect and admiration for the man who had shown her the true meaning of courage. Daniel blinked in surprise. Princesses did not bow, not to humans, not to anyone. But this gesture, small and quiet, spoke louder than any words could. I apologize, Daniel," she said softly, "for my words, for my pride, for thinking that strength is only measured by what the eye can see. I see you now truly." Daniel's lips curved into the smallest, gentlest smile. "I accept your apology, Princess Sarayla," he said, "and I understand your journey to this understanding. It is not easy to see the truth when pride and tradition cloud the mind." For a long moment, they sat together, quiet, not needing to fill the space with words. In the silence, they shared something stronger than any conversation could convey: a mutual respect, a recognition of strength, and the beginning of trust that could not be broken by mocking words or assumptions. Later, when the princess stood and walked toward the council chambers, she felt different. She felt lighter, stronger, humble, yet proud not of herself, but of what she had learned. And Daniel followed, not as a soldier merely obeying orders, but as a human who had shown the galaxy what quiet courage truly meant. From that day on, the Iluan Empire would remember the story of the human who wore old, dented armor, who remained silent when mocked, and who taught a young princess the power of patience, dignity, and true strength. Princess Sarala would never mock a human again. She would never underestimate courage and silence. And Daniel Ward would continue to protect her, not because he was commanded to, but because he carried honor in every action, in every step, and